Before this story begins, let me say this. If you've ever sat in a quiet room and felt louder thoughts than any noise outside, if you've ever been not alone, but still deeply lonely, then this story isn't entertainment. It's a mirror. So before we go any further, subscribe to this channel. Not because I need a number, but because stories like this don't show up on your screen by accident. They find you when you're ready to hear them. Now let me take you back to the night everything finally made sense. I never imagined that something so ordinary, so painfully uneventful, could shift the way I saw my entire life. There was no argument, no vitrail, no dramatique gudvier, just a suitcase, a closing door, and a silence that stayed behind longer than it should have. My husband had left for another work trip. By that point, it wasn't unusual. His schedule was predictable in the way distance becomes predictable. He moved through the house efficiently, like someone already halfway gone. Clothes folded with care. Laptop charged. Phone checked twice. A quick kiss on the cheek. A promise to call when he landed. "I won't be long," he said. He always said that. I stood in the hallway, watching the door close behind him, listening as his footsteps faded, then the engine starting, then the sound of his car dissolving into the street. And just like that, the house exhaled. Not a peaceful exhale. The heavy kind. The kind that presses inward instead of releasing outward. Our home was beautiful. Almost too beautiful. Every corner looked like it belonged in a magazine. Open space, high ceilings, carefully chosen furniture that had taken months of discussion to agree on. It was a house designed for laughter, shared mornings, late-night conversations. Instead, it often felt like a museum of good intentions. When he traveled, the house didn't feel empty. It felt paused, like it was waiting for life to return. And the quiet wasn't calming. It was confrontational. The only presence that never changed was Maximus. Maximus was our golden retriever. Large, calm, observant in a way that felt almost unsettling sometimes. We'd adopted him years earlier, back when our schedules aligned better, when conversations didn't feel rushed, when silence didn't feel like something to survive. Over time, Maximus became more than a dog. He became rhythm. Morning walks. Predictable routines. A living reminder that something in my life still showed up consistently. When my husband traveled, Maximus filled the spaces without ever trying to replace anyone. He didn't distract me from the loneliness. He softened it. That night felt heavier than usual. I tried everything to drown it out. The television played in the background, but I wasn't watching. I scrolled endlessly on my phone, absorbing nothing. Dinner was leftovers eaten standing at the counter, barely tasting it. Nothing helped. Eventually, exhaustion won. I sank into the couch, staring at nothing, thinking about everything. Maximus walked over quietly and laid down beside me. Not touching, not demanding, just close enough that I could feel his warmth through the space between us. I rested my hand on his fur without thinking. Slow. Absent-minded. Familiar. "It's just us tonight," I whispered. His tail thumped once. Not excited. Not needy. Just present. And something about that broke through the noise. Not joy. Not relief. But stillness. For the first time that evening, my thoughts slowed. And that's when the memories I'd been avoiding finally caught up to me. The conversations that had slowly shifted from emotional to logistical. The way "how was your day?" became a formality instead of curiosity. How loneliness can exist even inside a marriage, especially inside a marriage. Maximus shifted slightly, resting his head against my leg, grounding me. I smiled faintly. It amazed me how something so simple, something so quiet, could feel so necessary. Eventually, fatigue took over. I turned off the lights, walked to the bedroom, slid under the covers. Maximus followed as always, curling up in his usual spot near the bed. As I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, something finally clicked. I wasn't craving excitement. I wasn't craving escape. I was craving connection. The next morning, sunlight filled the room. Maximus was already awake, watching me like he'd spent the night standing guard. I smiled without thinking. And as the day unfolded, I noticed something different. Not in him. In me. I noticed how much emotional weight I had been carrying alone. How easily I had replaced conversation with routine. How silence had become safer than honesty. Later, I sat on the couch again, Maximus nearby, and allowed myself to think without distraction. Animals don't cure loneliness. They reveal it. They show us what consistency feels like, what unconditional presence looks like. And sometimes, they force us to confront what's missing elsewhere. That realization followed me through the day, through the laundry, through our walk around the neighborhood, through moments where my mind kept circling the same unanswered questions. That evening, I took Maximus to the park. The air was cool, the sky clear, the paths nearly empty. We walked slowly, without purpose. I sat on a bench. He settled beside me. Looking up at the stars, something shifted again. Not confusion, clarity. I didn't need distraction. I needed honesty, with myself first. Maximus hadn't filled a void. He had highlighted one. On the drive home, the house felt different. Not oppressive. Neutral. Waiting. Back on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, Maximus nearby. I rested my hand on his fur one last time. "Thank you," I whispered. Not for saving me, but for reminding me to pay attention. Because comfort should never replace connection. Routine should never replace communication. And loneliness doesn't mean something is broken. It means something is asking to be addressed. And this time, I was ready to face it. That night, I didn't sleep right away. The house was quiet again, but it no longer felt like it was watching me. It felt like it was waiting for a decision. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying moments I had brushed aside for years. Not dramatic fights. Not betrayal. Just small things that had stacked up silently. Missed conversations. Unasked questions. Feelings postponed because there was always later. Later had become a habit. Maximus shifted softly near the bed, the faint sound of his breathing steady and calm. I focused on that rhythm, letting it anchor me. Somewhere between the silence and the dark, I realized something uncomfortable. I had become very good at enduring. Enduring distance. Enduring quiet disappointment. Enduring emotional hunger without naming it. Endurance looks like strength from the outside. But inside, it slowly teaches you to expect less. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. The house was still wrapped in early light, the kind that makes everything look gentler than it really is. I made coffee and stood by the kitchen window, watching Maximus sit patiently by the door, waiting for our walk. That patience struck me. He never rushed me. Never demanded. Never withdrew. He simply showed up, every single time. During our walk, the neighborhood felt unchanged, but I felt different inside it. The same houses. The same streets. Yet my thoughts weren't drifting anymore. They were focused. Intentional. I asked myself a question I had avoided for too long. When was the last time I told my husband how lonely I felt? Without joking about it, without minimizing it, without softening it so he wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I didn't like the answer. Later that afternoon my phone buzzed. A message from him. Just landed. Long flight. I'll call tonight. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. Normally, I would have replied with something light. Something safe. A heart emoji. A miss you. A routine response that kept things smooth. This time, I typed something different. Okay. I'll be awake. When night came, I didn't distract myself with noise. I didn't turn the TV on. I didn't scroll. I sat on the couch. Maximus lay nearby, his presence quiet but steady. When the phone rang, my heart beat faster. Not with excitement, but with awareness. I answered. We talked about the usual things at first. His flight. The hotel. Work meetings. Then there was a pause. Normally, I would have filled it. This time I didn't. I need to tell you something, I said. The words didn't rush out. They came slowly, carefully, honestly. I told him how lonely the house felt when he was gone. How I had learned to live inside routines instead of conversations. How silence had started to feel safer than saying the wrong thing. There was another pause. Longer this time. I didn't know it was that bad, he said quietly. And I realized something important. Neglect isn't always intentional. Distance doesn't always come from a lack of love. Sometimes it grows simply because no one says, "This hurts." We didn't solve everything that night. There was no dramatic apology. No saben transformación. But something shifted. He listened. Really listened. And for the first time in a long time, I felt heard, not fixed, not reassured, just acknowledged. After the call ended, I sat there for a while, letting the quiet settle differently than before. Maximus lifted his head and looked at me, as if checking in. I smiled. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered. His tail thumped once. Not approval. Not celebration. Just presence. In the days that followed, the house didn't magically feel full all the time. There were still quiet moments. Still evenings where the silence returned. But now, the silence wasn't hiding anything. It was honest. I learned something important through all of this. Animals don't replace what's missing in our lives. They reveal what we've been avoiding. They reflect consistency so clearly that inconsistency becomes impossible to ignore. Maximus never saved me. He reminded me to pay attention. Reminded me that comfort without connection eventually becomes emptiness. Reminded me that love requires communication, not just coexistence. One evening, as I sat on the couch again, hand resting on his fur, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness. Peace. The kind that comes from choosing honesty over avoidance. I leaned down and whispered, "Thank you." Not because he filled a void, but because he showed me where it was. And this time, I didn't look away.